This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's continue with part 2 of Jersey Joe Walcott versus Rocky Marciano. 1949, June 22nd, Ezra Charles, Chicago. He lost 15 rounds for the NBA heavyweight title. That's where we left off. 1950, February 8th, Harold Johnson. Now that was Phil Johnson's father. Harold Johnson is the son of Phil Johnson that he fought earlier. Philadelphia, he knocked him out in 3 rounds. March 3rd, Emilio Gramolite. New York killed him in 7 rounds. And this continues 1951, March 7th, Ezra Charles, Detroit. He lost in 15 rounds for the world heavyweight title. But then he had a rematch. So this will be the 3rd fight with Ezra Charles within 2 years. July 18th, Ezra Charles, Pittsburgh, killed him in 7 rounds and won the world heavyweight title. And he became the oldest heavyweight champion of all times before George Foreman later on, when George Foreman knocked out Michael Moore. 1952, January. Look how many fights he had in January. These are exhibitions, but they were all fights. Jackie Berkey. He fought him consistently all over the place. Then Ezra Charles in Philadelphia for a title shot and lost in 15 rounds. This was June 5th. Now, September 23rd, Rocky Marciano, Philadelphia, killed him in 13 rounds and lost his world heavyweight championship. And this is where we are right now. We're going to try and figure out how great this fight was that they were talking about. But then he would fight him one more time for a rematch, 1953, May 15th, Rocky Marciano, Chicago. This time he was KO'd in 1 round. It's a very controversial fight, surrounded by a very controversial knockout. For the world heavyweight title bout, retired to become a parole officer. He was elected into the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1969, total bout 67, KO 30. So this is Jersey Joe Walcott. Outstanding fighter, outstanding humanitarian, great heavyweight champion. Salute to Jersey Joe Walcott. Now, Rocky Marciano had a record of 49-0. At this time, 43 knockouts. Years fought, 1947, 1955. Titles held, World Heavyweight Champion, 1952, 1955. Now, Rocky Marciano was born in Brockton, Massachusetts on September 1st, 1923. He stood 5 foot 11 inches. And he weighed 184 pounds. He was managed by Al Wow. He was an all-American athlete. He played football and baseball in high school. And he was given a tryout as a catcher with the Chicago Cubs farm team. He won amateur bouts, the AAU tournament. Marciano, who was undefeated, was one of the hardest hitters in the game. Knocked out 2 opponents in a night and broke his yard. Marciano, who was undefeated, was one of the hardest hitters in the game. Now, I say that again because Rocky Marciano could punch. He was a devastating puncher. And if he couldn't do anything else, that he could do. And a lot of the opponents at that time didn't want to fight Marciano because of that reason. He was a young and up-and-coming heavyweight. He didn't have the greatest skill at the time, but he had a lot of determination. He would apply pressure on you. And if he caught you clean, he would knock you out because he hit you in the arms and the shoulders and the neck. He would hit you on the side, in the leg, and the thigh if the referee wasn't looking. He was a Bowen fighter. It was very hard to knock him out at that time. And you just have fighters who, were very nervous of Rocky Marciano. As you can see here, Marciano, he knocks out Joe Louis in the 8th round, Lee Savoy, Harry Matthews. Harry Matthews has never been knocked out before. and he was able to knock out Harry Matthews. He won the World Heavyweight title on September 23rd, 1952 by a knockout over Jersey Joe Walcott in 13 rounds in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Then he repeated it in 1 round and knocked out Walcott in Chicago. He defended his title against Roland Estraza in 11. In the second bout, in 1954, Marciano twice successfully defended his title against Ezar Charles, 15 rounds, and stopped Charles in 8 rounds. He died August 31st, 1969 in an airplane accident. Began his professional career in 1947. March 17th, Lee Epperson killed him in 3 rounds. 1948, July 12th, Harry Belzerin in Providence, Rhode Island, killed him in 1 round. Now, see, Rocky Marciano fought a lot up there because he was from Broxton, Massachusetts. July 19th, John Edwards, Providence, killed him in 1. August 9th, Bobby Quinn, Providence, killed him in 3. August 23rd, Eddie Ross, Providence, killed him in 1. August 30th, Jimmy Weeks, Providence, killed him in 1. September 13th, Jerry Jackson, Providence, killed him in 1. September 20th, Bill Hatterman, Providence, killed him in 1. Now this goes on and on and on. Bob Jefferson, Patrick Connolly. I mean, this is nonstop. All knockouts, as you can see, 1949. But the question around Rocky Marciano at that time was, the people never heard of these guys. You know, they didn't know who these guys were. First notable opponent that I actually see here, October 10th, Ted Lowry, Providence, Rhode Island, defeated him in 10 rounds. Now, see, Ted Lowry wasn't knocked out. And this goes on, 1950. Now he starts getting into some contenders. March 24th, Roland Estraza, New York, defeated him in 10 rounds. June 5th, Eldridge Eatman, Providence, killed him in 3 rounds. See, none of these fighters were really heard of at that time. And they were looking at his record books and they didn't really have, many fights. December 18th, Bill Wilson, Providence, killed 1. I don't even have pictures to show you of these guys. I don't. 1951, Keenan Simmons, I have a picture of him. African-American heavyweight. Providence, killed him in 8 rounds. Harold Mitchell, March 20th, Hartford, Connecticut, killed him in 2 rounds. July 12th, Rex Lane, New York City, killed him in 6 rounds. That was a good fight. August 27th, Freddie Bishop, he was a former Joe Louis opponent, in Boston, killed him in 4. October 26th, one of the saddest nights in Madison Square Garden history, Joe Louis, New York, he was KO'd in 8 rounds. 1952, February 13th, Lee Savoy, the former Joe Louis opponent, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, killed him in 6 rounds. Bernie Reynolds, July 28th, Harry Matthews. Harry Kid Matthews had never been stopped. New York City, killed him in 2 rounds. That was a very good win for Walcott, for Rocky Marciano. September 23rd, Jersey Joe Walcott, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, killed him in 13 rounds, and he won the World Heavyweight title. 1953, May 15th, Jersey Joe Walcott, Chicago, killed him in 1 round. September 24th, Roland Estraza, New York City, killed him in 11 rounds. 1954. June 17th, Ezar Charles, New York, defeated him in 15 rounds. September 17th, Ezar Charles, New York, killed him in 8 rounds. 1955, May 16th, Don Cockle, San Francisco, California, killed him in 9 rounds. September 21st, Archie Moore, Ancient Archie, New York, killed him in 9 rounds. 1956, announced retirement as undefeated world heavyweight champion, April 27, 1956. Now, Rocky Marciano is now champion. The title bouts during 1953 was heavyweight Rocky Marciano when he KO'd Jersey Joe Walcott in the first round at Chicago Stadium, Chicago, Illinois on May 15th. Rocky Marciano KO'd Roland Estrada. There's 2 fights this year. In 11 rounds at the Polo Grounds, New York City, New York on September 24th. The light heavyweight championship bout was Archie Moore, outpointed Joey Maxim. The middleweight championship bout was Carl Bobo Olsen, outpointing Patty Young. And he also fought Randy Turpin, outpointing Charlie Husband. Carl Bobo Olsen outpointed Randy Turpin in 15 rounds in Madison Square Garden. Welterweight Kid Gavilan KO'd Chuck Davey in 10 rounds in Chicago Stadium, Chicago, Illinois on February 11th. Kid Gavilan outpointed Carmen Basilio in 15 rounds for a split decision at the War Memorial Auditorium, Syracuse, New York. That was kind of like home cooking, as far as I understand. New York on September 18th. Kid Gavilan appointed Johnny Braxton. As you can see here, Rocky Marciano's doesn't have a record of his receipts for his fights in 1948, 1947. So let's take a look at that fight between Jersey Joe Walcott and Rocky Marciano. Now, Rocky Marciano would face an up-and-coming heavyweight by the name of Roland Estrada. Now, at this time, everyone thought that Roland Estrada would have a chance to beat Rocky Marciano. Roland Estrada was one of them guys that was talking very, very, very slick to Rocky Marciano. He had a mouth on him. And he was trying to set up this fight. It was a promotional gig. But he didn't like Rocky Marciano. So Rocky Marciano took care of him like he did most of his opponents, by not trying to knock him out right away, but trying to insult him and assault him at the same time. He would carry him, lay off on him when he saw he was hurt. He would punch him in the arms. He would punch him in the shoulders. He would punch him in the neck. He would hit him in the thigh. That's how he felt about Roland Estrada and his insults. Jersey Joe Walcott would face Ezzard Charles in 1951. And this would set up this Rocky Marciano fight. And this was a brutal fight between Ezzard Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott. Now, they done fought several times before that, but this was for the World Heavyweight Championship. And they both knew what was at stake. And you're talking about two of one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. And like I said before, Ezzard Charles, to me, has a good case of being one of the greatest middleweight fighters. He wasn't a champion, but fighters of all time. You see here Marciano blocking a left jab of Roland Estrada. Marciano battles with Ezzard Charles. At that time, Marciano was 29, Charles was 32. Marciano was 5'11", Charles 6. He was 6 feet. Marciano weighed 185 pounds, Ezzard Charles weighed 189 pounds. Marciano's reach was 67 inches. Ezzard Charles' reach was 74 inches. And that Charles fight was something else, especially the second one. And Charles gave him a good run for his money. Problem was, Charles, even though he was a heavyweight champion before this fight, but he couldn't take a heavyweight's punch. Not a heavyweight's punch. Not to that extent. And that was the problem with Floyd Patterson was Sonny Liston, because it didn't have the frame to hold a heavyweight punch or absorb a heavyweight punch. Now here you have Rocky Marciano scheduled to fight Joe Louis. Joe Louis was 37 years old at the time. Marciano was 27. He was actually 10 years his junior. And you can see Joe Louis was 210 pounds, so that's heavy for Joe Louis. Marciano was 184, right at his peak weight. Louis has 76 inches of reach on him. Marciano, 67 inches of reach on him. So Marciano has shorter arms. You can see Marciano in a bout with Joe Louis. Like I told you, one of the saddest nights in boxing history. This fight took place in Madison Square Garden. And one of the craziest things about this fight, it didn't even have to happen. Joe Louis could have refused to fight Rocky Marciano. Marciano needed him. Joe Louis didn't need Rocky Marciano. Neither of them were champions at the time. But Joe Louis figured if he beats Rocky Marciano, he would get another crack with Joe Walcott. Because after Joe Walcott felt he was robbed in the first fight, he felt he would not take a chance again fighting Joe Louis. See, Rocky Marciano catches Joe Louis with a right uppercut. Joe Louis never saw it coming. But Joe Louis was way out of his prime at this point in time. And here you have one of the saddest nights in Madison Square Garden history. Ruby Goldstein has to call a halt to the fight. You can see he didn't want to do that because Joe Louis was a legendary fighter at this point in time. I understand that Rocky Marciano in his dressing room was crying like a baby because he felt he idolized Joe Louis, and this was not the way he wanted Joe Louis to go out. But of course, he's going to think of himself, as he should, to try and get that opportunity with Joe Walcott. As you can see here, Rocky Marciano in line to fight Ezra Charles. Rocky Marciano was the champion. Ezra Charles was the challenger. I have about 10 of these particular portraits that I have them in full too. This is just a second one. But I have the complete page. It's a double spreadsheet of Marciano and Charles. But it was a few of them. Him and Harry Kid Matthews, him and Archie Moore. I have all of those. They're in the frame in the man cave. But that was him and Archie, Ezra Charles. Here you can see Rocky Marciano. Have him on an exhibit card. And he's featured, and he's covered on the cover of Ring magazine. It's 1952. Actually, it's 1951 edition. Yeah, Marciano and Roland Estrada again. As you can see here, Roland Estrada was an up-and-coming heavyweight. But he absolutely couldn't take the pressure of Rocky Marciano. Here you have Rocky Marciano and Rex Lane. Rex Lane was at one point a middleweight, and then he fought as a heavyweight. And Marciano chose him, and Rex Lane gets knocked out by Rocky Marciano. This is in 1951, July 12th. And here you have Rocky Marciano, Stillman's Gym. Stillman's Gym was a famous gymnasium ran by Lou Stillman in the 1920s up to the 1960s. And you have here Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott. This is one of the outstanding heavyweight championship bouts in the 1950s. Marciano was just a foursome to be wrestling with, a force to be reckoned with. He didn't have the skill, but he had the endurance, and he had the heart. And sometimes that's what it takes to get the job done. He had the punching power. He can care less one way or the other what you did to him. It was about what he was going to do to you. It's Marciano and Roland Estraza. Here you have Roland Estraza. And here you have Marciano and Walcott. Jersey Joe Walcott, Rocky Marciano. And this is when Rocky Marciano lifted the heavyweight championship from Jersey Joe Walcott. Jersey Joe was a fine heavyweight champion. He was an outstanding fighter. He made a mistake. He saw that Rocky Marciano was getting ready to throw a right hand, and he tried to meet him with a right hand himself when he should have threw a left hook, because he was in position to throw a left hook, and he brought the right hand from about 6 inches further than where he would have threw the left hook and got caught. And Walcott knows that, and he just made a mistake. Unfortunately for him, he paid for it. If you see the position of Walcott's body, his left knee is out in front, which means that at one point, his right hand was behind him. Left hook was coming right because Marciano was coming up from the right, his right side, and when he threw the right hand, he landed towards his left. So when he came up from the right side, either an uppercut or a left hook, he probably could have stopped Marciano, because Walcott was a very, very good puncher. And you can see he was trying to set a trap because he was backing up all the way to the ropes. once he felt his back hit the ropes, he should have uncorked that left hook, just to at least get him out of trouble, if nothing else, and come up with a right uppercut, or bounce off the rope with a straight right hand, or pull Marciano in and went around him and then had him on the ropes. He's been fighting long enough, but it happened. It's in the past. And as a result, Rocky Marciano become the new heavyweight champion of the world. And as you see here, Harry Kid Matthews against Rocky Marciano. Yeah, Rocky Marciano and Archie Moore. So Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott has been introduced to my museum at the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Salute to my subscribers. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Salute.